Gout has a reputation problem. For centuries, we called it the disease of kings. The price you paid for too much wine, too much meat, too much of everything. Picture the cartoon, a red, swollen big toe propped on a velvet cushion, a goblet sitting nearby. Basically, gout was the original lifestyle flex. King Henry VIII, King Charles V, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, just to name a few. Congratulations, you've eaten so well your foot has filed a complaint. So here's what doesn't add up. If gout is just a rich man's punishment for indulgence, why is it more common today than ever, across every income bracket? And why do so many people cut out the steak, give up the wine, do everything they're told, and still end up back in the emergency room at 3 in the morning with a toe that feels like it's on fire? The answer is that we've been pointing at the wrong culprit. Gout was never really a problem with your foot, it's a problem with your metabolism. Now, I know some of you are looking at the title and wondering why gout is showing up in a series on metabolic health. Just bear with me. By the end of this, you'll see it was never really in the wrong category. Let's start with what gout actually is, because the joint pain is the symptom, not the disease. Gout happens when a compound called uric acid, or urate, builds up in the blood and past a certain point starts to crystallize. Those crystals are sharp and needle-like. They settle into joints, classically the base of the big toe, and your immune system reacts to them the way it would to an intruder. That reaction includes heat, swelling, and pain. So the crystals are real, and yes, they hurt, but the crystals are the end of the story. The question that actually decides whether you get gout is why the uric acid was high in the first place. And that's where it stops being a joint problem and starts being a metabolic one. Uric acid comes from two places. The first is the one you've probably heard about, purines, building blocks found in certain foods, especially red meat, organ meat, and some seafood. Break down purines, you get uric acid. That's the part everyone knows, and it's why the standard advice is to cut out those foods. But here's the part that usually gets left out. Most people with high uric acid don't have it because they're producing too much. They have it because they're not clearing enough. Roughly 2/3 of your uric acid is removed by your kidneys. And how well your kidneys do that job depends heavily on one hormone, insulin. When insulin is chronically high, which is the hallmark of insulin resistance, your kidneys hold on to more uric acid instead of flushing it out. In clinical practice, I see this quite often. The people with gout are more likely to have prediabetes or high blood pressure or extra weight, for example. And that's not a coincidence. It's the same process wearing different costumes. And there's one more piece, the one that ties gout directly to topics we've covered before. Fructose. Sweet, sweet fructose. Fructose is unusual. When your body processes it, mostly in the liver, it burns through cellular energy so fast that the breakdown products feed straight into uric acid production. In other words, fructose is the one sugar that manufactures uric acid as a byproduct. If you watch the fatty liver episodes, this should sound familiar. It's the same fructose pathway that drives fat to pile up in the liver. Same fuel, two different fires. Which is exactly why sugary drinks, and not just the steak, keep showing up in gout research. So it begs the question, why are humans so prone to this in the first place? Most mammals barely deal with gout, and the reason is an enzyme called uricase. Uricase takes uric acid and breaks it down into a harmless compound that's easy to flush out. Dogs have it, cats have it, mice have it. We don't. So in the great evolutionary lottery of uric acid disposal, your dog won, and you didn't. Something to think about next time he's looking smug. Somewhere around 15 to 20 million years ago, our ape ancestors lost the working version of that enzyme through a series of mutations. On paper, that sounds like a defect, but the leading theory is that it was an advantage. Those ancestors were living through a leaner, cooler stretch of history, where food, especially fruit, was seasonal, and survival meant making the most of every calorie. Higher uric acid appears to have helped them do exactly that. It amplified fructose's ability to store fat, and it helped the body hold on to sodium and keep the blood pressure up when food and salt were scarce. So losing uricase may have been a survival upgrade in that moment in time, a built-in feature for turning a good fruit season into stored energy for the lean months ahead. The problem is that we don't live in lean months anymore. We live in a world where fructose is available 12 months a year in liquid form on every corner, added to so many foods that are available at the grocery store. The feature didn't change, the environment did. A system designed to squeeze every last drop out of scarce fruit has no idea what to do with a daily soda. Once you see gout as a metabolic problem, it stops looking like a lone condition and starts looking like a member of the family. People with gout tend to have higher rates of metabolic syndrome, high blood pressure, high blood sugar, abnormal cholesterol, and excess abdominal fat. Insulin resistance, fatty liver. These aren't separate diseases that happen to show up together. They're branches off the same trunk. That's also why a first gout attack can be an early warning. It isn't only a joint event. It can be your body flagging that the metabolic machinery has been under strain for a while. So where does this leave the steak? Diet still matters, but probably not in the way you were told. Here's the part that surprises people. Cutting purine-heavy diet foods produces only a modest drop in uric acid, and cutting back on fructose, while worth doing, is in the same ballpark. No single food swap moves the needle dramatically on its own in most cases. What actually does is the metabolic picture. In studies, losing weight and improving insulin sensitivity lowers uric acid more than cutting any one specific food group. Treat the soil, not just the weed. None of that replaces proper medical care. Gout does have effective treatments, both for stopping an acute attack and for lowering uric acid long term, especially if you have had multiple attacks. And if you are getting recurrent attacks, that conversation is worth having with your doctor. But the framing shift is the part most people never hear. The attack on your toe and the numbers on your metabolic panel aren't necessarily two separate problems. They're often the same story told in two different places. If this changed how you think about gout, there's a good chance the rest of this series will do the same for the conditions that often sit right next to it. I cover this stuff regularly, breaking down the science behind how your body actually works. So consider subscribing if that's something you want to learn more about. I'm the Science MD, and this is the science behind your health. Thanks for joining, and see you next time.